the front page of the Times today. I mean, I know, obviously, strikes have been ongoing. We seem to be talking about it every day at the moment. But the Times front page is saying strike costs will force unions into climb down. The fact that actually, it's costing the unions millions because they're having to pay strikers, because they're having to use these hardship funds, and actually the government thinks that the cash will run out by spring. How big a factor, Marina, do you think that this will be, or do you think there's enough will to sort of see it through nonetheless?
I think it's a dangerous game. It's a game of chicken, essentially, that the government are playing. And I think it's really quite brutal of them that they're doing this. The people striking, they don't actually want to strike. So they are doing this. Some of them are getting money for it, some aren't. And I think what we're going to see now is... This is what I don't like about the government. They are pretending that they don't have any power. They want the unions to basically engage with the employers. But actually, they're almost being like the puppeteers behind the scenes, because a bit like Network Rail were going to offer 10% over 2 years to RMT. And then, maybe the Transport Minister had a whisper in the ear and said, no, we're not going to do that. And then they actually pulled that offer off the table. And I think government needs to come to the table rather than playing this game of chicken, which, by the way, is going to have real-life repercussions, as we're starting to see on, for example, NHS trusts. So, I don't know, it's a really dangerous game to play, actually, and I think it's ruthless and brutal of the government.
Henry, you think it's just a stalling tactic that the government think, actually, do you know what, if we hold out for long enough, the money's going to run out, the will's going to run out, they're going to lose public support on this?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's two things to bear in mind. The first is spring is quite a long time away. That's an awful lot of disruption for British people with the NHS and public services. But I think the other thing the government doesn't really seem to have factored in is that they're holding the line on the pay offers made by independent pay review bodies. But those offers were made on the basis of bad inflation predictions. Basically, the predictions they were using were far too low. So even if this did work, even if the unions did have to fold because they didn't have the finances to support extended strike action, next year the pay review bodies are going to come back with new offers on the basis of the actual inflation that we've got. It's going to be an awful lot higher. And the government's going to be back in exactly the same position, but they won't be able to hide behind the pay review bodies. So, this might work in the short term, it might not, it will cause a lot of disruption either way, but what it won't do is put our public services on a long-term footing, and what we're still not seeing from the government is a long-term plan for how they intend to resolve this dispute.
Henry, what's happening behind the scenes on this story? Is this the government sort of briefing, saying, we know you're going to run out of cash and we're in this for the long haul? Does this make it sound to us like there's not going to be a solution to these disputes anytime soon? So, yeah, essentially it is exactly a game of chicken. The government is trying to signal to the unions that actually if you do this, you're going to drain all your finances, and at the end of it, you won't get what you want. So you might as well settle now. And the unions, for their part, are trying to send to the government that actually, no, we're in this, we don't think you've got the political will to eat 3 months of huge disruption. So, yeah, that's what's going on here. Each side needs the other one to back down, and so we're getting all of this sort of posturing in the press.
With regards to the NHS, though, I must say, I think this is by design. I think if they can run the NHS into a state where people go, do you know what, it's not fit for purpose, or it's just hemorrhaging too much money, this is my thinking, and many others as well, this is the route to privatisation, because what's happening at the moment is we're seeing, if there aren't enough nurses, for example, the NHS then having to go to agency staff and pay a premium for those agency staff. And who owns those agencies? It's the private sector. Tory peer Lord Ashcroft owns one of the big private healthcare companies that actually recruits and puts in nurses at a huge premium when we don't have enough. So I think this is by design to basically cripple and collapse the NHS, and then everyone goes, it wasn't working, off we go, and we end up with a privatised system.
Just point out, over the last few years, the government has actually overseen an increase in the number of nursing places, actually training places each year. So I don't think there is a conspiracy to sell off the NHS.